Are we live? Okay. All right. I guess we are now officially live here from the rooftop in San Diego. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out. We're going to be talking today about governance on Cardano, what it means and how we get there. So whether this is your first time or you've been with Cardano for a long time, I got my friends Rod and Chili from DRMZ Pool here with me today that are going to help us hopefully answer all the questions you might possibly have about what does governance mean on a blockchain and how does it all work. So, take off my sunglasses so I can actually see what the screen says here. What is governance on Cardano? Primarily, we are concerned with our network parameters, hard fork initiation, and of course, the ultimate question of treasury disposition. This is a programmatic blockchain-based system that will allow us for any user, technically, there are some caveats there that we'll get into a little bit later, could submit an action on the blockchain, have it get voted positively, people approve that vote, and then it automatically goes into effect without any third-party involvement whatsoever. Everything only exists and lives and is managed on the blockchain. And this is how we move towards a decentralized model designed to involve every stakeholder, no matter how large or small, in a community-based decision-making process. The ultimate goal, of course, being to achieve a self-sustaining system where the future of Cardano is democratically governed by its community. So why is it important? Why does governance matter? Why do we care, right? Every ADA holder, you, me, everybody else in between, will have a voice in this system, and that's, I think, important. It's very important to me that everybody exercise that voice, no matter how small they might think they are, so that we actually have a, I think I say it in the next point here, if we are all citizens of the digital nation state of Cardano, then it's important that the governance and the way that we go about applying our governance represents everybody that's an active member of the system. So network parameters, almost everything that happens on Cardano is parameterized. So everything from block size to stake pools, our K parameter that everybody loves to talk about so much, to the fee structure, min UTXO, all of these things are parameters in Cardano. And so that means that when governance goes live, we get to decide how we set those parameters. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how the community decides to set things like the treasury tax and a lot more. And so hard fork initiation, if you're not familiar with Cardano, we have this thing called the hard fork combinator. Also originally known as the forkless upgrade, the FU, which I thought was a better acronym. But so essentially our stake pool operators like the DRMZ crew and our voting population are going to decide, are we ready to upgrade to a new ledger era that is important. Right now it's, IOG develops some software and they go, hey guys, we think we're ready. And everybody kind of says like, okay, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's up to IOG and CF and the other holders of the governance keys to decide. So really, we are going to now get to decide, are we ready to upgrade? Yes or no? And then we actually initiate that process as a community. But then, of course, the big 1.3553 billion elephant in the room is the Cardano treasury, and that is our community war chest, currently, as of this morning, valued at roughly $750 million US, that we get to decide where it's going and how it's going and who's getting it and what we're going to use it for. So For me, treasury management is going to be probably the most contentious and bitter fought part of governance, but it's also the most important because I'm not really aware of any other globally decentralized community that has that big of a development fund to work with and decide and prioritize what's important to them. So some important points. The Treasury receives funding every epoch from the monetary expansion rate as well as the fees generated by the network. And so that is dictated by a protocol parameter called tau, which is currently set to 0.2 or 20% of all rewards go into the Treasury. So we are currently pumping up the Treasury by about 5 million ADA every 5 days. Roughly 1 million ADA per day is going into the Treasury. So that is kind of could be considered either the acceptable burn rate, or maybe we need to lower that down or increase that up. So again, that's what we get to decide together. So big question, how are we going to spend it, right? That's what we all really need to think about, because we're going to need to budget and then figure out how are we spending it, why are we spending it, and who's getting it. So grants and contracts, something that a lot of people haven't thought about necessarily is that IOG, CF, Emergo, some of these other entities received Genesis funding to get us to where we are today. But in the future, we're going to have to decide, oh, we want a new feature, so who's going to develop it for us and what's it going to cost? And then we're going to take some money out of the Treasury and give it to somebody. So we have a lot of great contractors already in the ecosystem, IOG, Twig, Well-Typed, D-Quadrant. Maybe we give it to them, maybe we give it to Intersect, and Intersect figures it out, or maybe future entities will spring up and raise their hand. And another way to think about this also is, of course, Project Catalyst, which we're in the middle of Fund 12 right now, which burns, I believe currently about 150 to 200 million ADA per year on Project Catalyst grants. So we're refilling at 365, but we're burning already about 200 million per year. So we've got, but we still have about 165 million ADA that's open for discussion before we even start to go negative, right? That is only the point that we would start to go negative of that 1.5 billion ADA treasury. So we've got a lot to spend. How can we spend it on community and outreach and events like this, right? How do we build the community? How do we bring more people into the ecosystem? How do we make them aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we can potentially and hopefully make their lives better? I know my good friend Rick McCracken has been really beating that drum that we need to market Cardano and everything a lot better. And right now we're not really spending a whole lot of money on a dedicated marketing arm or a marketing branch of the ecosystem. So maybe Intersect is the place for that. Or maybe, again, it's a future entity, somebody new that's going to come in that says, I know how to market this ecosystem, and we give them a grant. So really, how should we spend it? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to you guys in this room, you guys watching on the live stream. What do you think is best? How do we spend this money? One thing that I like to point out here is we have two kind of very different ways to look at large-scale treasuries. And I like to use the example of the Norwegian oil fund, which has very tight guardrails that say this fund must last forever. So all future generations must have some amount of money. So they spend it very conservatively and in very small amounts because it's for their posterity. And then we have Saudi oil funds and places, you know, like the United Arab Emirates and other places that have oil money that are burning it essentially as fast as they can get it because they want to get ahead and catch up with the rest of the world and the technological advancements. So should we be more like Norway? Should we be more like the Saudis? That's somewhere in the middle. You know, that's kind of where we have to decide. But those are two very good real-world examples of people that have large sovereign wealth funds and how they choose to manage it. And so we have to figure out some happy medium in the middle. Because, yeah, we're talking about the future of Cardano governance. We're hopefully increasing decentralization. That should always be the first goal. We're hopefully empowering our community and not a small group of oligarchs and power bases. We're hopefully building a protocol that is adaptable to the future. Hopefully the protocol is sustainable, and we're doing it via community funding. So that's where we're going. And how do we get there? SIP 1694 is kind of the next thing we're going to be talking about, which is the technical how-to roadmap of how we're going to at least do this as a first draft. Intersect MBO, probably an organization you've heard a lot about, but maybe don't know a lot about yet, that we're going to go into a little bit after we talk about SIP 1694. And then, of course, you, everybody here, everybody watching, everybody that's part of the Cardano community, thousands of people around the world that have attended workshops like this, that have attended Twitter spaces and been on Discords and Cardano forums, to hopefully learn, understand, and share your thoughts and opinions, because that's how we build a representative governance that represents everybody, is by sharing our voices and our opinions. So, with that said, does anybody have any introductory questions before we dive into what is SIP 1694? No. Okay. So SIP 1694, which CIP stands for Cardano Improvement Protocol, or Proposal, rather, and 1694 is a number that was randomly chosen by Charles because it associates with some obscure date from history. I apologize, Charles, I don't remember what it was. But this is the technical description of how governance is going to work on-chain. And it's the critical first step of formalizing Cardano's on-chain governance, because without the technical how-to, a lot of highbrow philosophical talk about it doesn't really work unless we know how does it work on-chain. So it's a tricameral system of governance, which means three bodies, which we're kind of familiar with in the US, where we have the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. But in our case, we have our stake pool operators, our DREPs, which I prefer to call voters, so the voting body, and then a constitutional committee. So it's a every vote counts sort of situation. So whether you delegate your vote or you vote for yourself, every Lovelace gets to vote with an equal amount of weight and an equal impact to the end result. In what will hopefully be an open and transparent process, and if it's not, then we definitely need to improve on that point. And we're deciding Cardano's future. So funding and network parameters and where we go into the future is what we're doing. So what is the role of the community? Essentially, if we want to have, we need a healthy and vibrant community of active voters and participants in the governance system, both for the security and the success of the governance. One of our big, kind of real world, real life complaints that I hear a lot is that, like, I don't feel like I'm actually represented by the people in governance. The government doesn't represent me or serve my interests. And so hopefully, if everybody here, everybody watching, everybody eventually reading this gets involved and makes their voices heard, we can represent everybody and make sure that everybody feels represented by at least what happens here on the blockchain. And we're not talking about healthcare, we're not talking about anything else, we're talking about a kind of fairly restricted monetary system. But with that in mind, hopefully everybody feels represented. And then this is actually just a couple of really interesting infographics that were developed by Mike Hornan of Able Stake Pool, Stake to Able, who's been a great champion of the system and exploring how this whole governance thing is going to work. And these books that we have on the table have all of these infographics inside of them, and so you'll be able to actually read them a little bit better and understand exactly how the meat and potatoes works here when it comes to what kind of actions can be proposed and who votes on each. That's all included in those books. which brings us to SanchoNet. And shout out Book.io and their Don Quixote publication. SanchoNet is the test network for Cardano governance. And it was named SanchoNet based on Sancho Panza from Don Quixote, who became the he became the governor of a fictional island called Barovia or something like that. I can never remember the name of it. And turns out he actually did really good and everybody liked him. So that's kind of who we're aspiring to be. And the mission of SanchoNet is to cultivate a system that remains grounded in reality while guided by our visionary principles as a blockchain community. Why SanchoNet? All of this stuff is new and never been done before, and so we need a safe place for the community of developers and the community themselves and everybody that's building these tools to safely break it, which we've done multiple times. We need to figure out where the weak spots are in this governance system, and so SanchoNet gives us the platform to develop the tools and skills necessary to take responsibility for on-chain governance. And we're going to, again, like I've kept saying throughout this entire presentation, develop Cardano into a platform where every voice holds significance, embracing inclusivity and pragmatic wisdom in governance. If you're ready to get started today, and hopefully you've all gotten your Vesper wallet set up and you're ready to go, Vesper is not quite SanchoNet capable at this time, but quite a few of the wallets are getting there. How can you get involved and become a good blockchain citizen? Become an active participant, for one. Choose a good SPO. Shout out Able and shout out DRMZ. Be aware of governance proposals and their impact and what's going on. And of course, engage in community discussions. Attend these workshops, whether digital or in person. And visit sanchogov.tools to get started today. That is actually our SanchoNet example platform that you can actually go on there. People can propose governance actions. You can vote on them. You can become a D-rep. And you can do all of that already today, but in a safe testnet environment where you can at least just get familiar with the process. And again, this is just another how to get involved. So sancho.network has a lot of good information about why and where the name came from and the actual correct names for everything. You should follow Mike Hornan of Able Stake Pool at Hornan7 on Twitter if you don't already, and start using the SanchoNet Gov tool, sanchogov.tools, to practice becoming a representative or a voter, to practice casting your vote, proposing actions, and you can even go so far as to propose a new constitution and a new constitutional committee and take over the network if you want, because that's the kind of things that we want to see happen to make sure that we're building an anti-fragile governance system. So thank you for that. That is the end of SIP 1694. And any more questions on that before we move on to the next one? Drew in the back.
So is SanchoNet required for SIP 1694? It's 1694.
SIP 1694, and is SanchoNet required? It's not necessarily required. It's that SanchoNet is a dedicated testnet, and we all know that, or at least some of us know my history, that I get really upset when testnets die. And so, but this is a testnet that was meant to be attacked and respun and damaged and destroyed and be a test network so that we could literally do our worst to the governance platform to ensure that, like I said, it's anti-fragile, right? So every time one of us comes up with an idea like, oh, I wonder if that would break something, we do it and we try it now on SanchoNet before. And so, but it also gives us this safe place, but we should actually see the preview and the pre-prod networks moving into the Conway era within the next few months, because we're going to be moving in that direction towards the mainnet hard fork. So we're going to need to actually get all these governance tools on the more long-term test nets in time.
That mainnet hard fork that you mentioned,
Yes, so what hard fork am I talking about? And so we are talking about the Chang hard fork, which will move us from the current, I think we're in the Babbage ledger era, into the Conway ledger era, where we'll be in a, what do we call it, a bootstrap phase for governance, where we will not have DREPs yet. We'll have SPOs and an interim constitutional committee. And so because we can't register and start to attract delegation for DREPs until we get into the Conway ledger era. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. And so the solution is that we'll go into the Conway era first with the Chang hard fork. And then that will allow DREPs to come on board. An interim body will be kind of responsible for ushering us through that phase. And then once we feel like we have a sufficient number of DREPs, probably 1 to 200 and a good amount of stake represented and delegated to those voters, then we can do another hard fork, and that interim body goes away and everything goes into the hands of the DREPs and the voters. Which brings us to Intersect. Intersect, you've probably heard a lot about it, and I will hopefully fill in some of the blanks for you over the next few minutes as we talk about Intersect. So, what is Intersect? The intersection of Cardano and its community. So Intersect is a members-based organization, very similar to I like to think of it like a chamber of commerce, maybe, or an international trade union like the ISO or the IEEE, where a lot of people, or the Web3, or not Web3, but what do they call the one that Google and everybody else is a part of? I can't think of the name for it right now, but the W3C, that's what it was. Yeah, so the World Wide Web Consortium that sets the standards for how browsers act and how JavaScript works and everything else. So essentially, it's a place for all of us to get together, share our ideas, and have a centralized town square in a decentralized ecosystem, but so hopefully it's a gathering point for us to build a secure collaborative ecosystem for Cardano's growth. So what is it? It's a members-based organization focused on ensuring the continuity and future development of the Cardano ecosystem. Because as we talked about a little bit earlier, at the end of this kind of phase of Cardano's development, the initial plan, the initial roadmap, the initial contract expires. And so who's responsible for carrying Cardano into the future? We are, as the community. And so we're going to decide what our priorities are and who's going to deliver those priorities to us. And so we're going to hopefully bring together the members of the ecosystem behind a shared vision, enabling a resilient, secure, transparent, and innovative ecosystem. So the goal is to be Cardano's town square. The town square was always, or the community green, whatever you want to call it, was always the place that people can get together and do the business of the town, even before we had really good, rigidly structured governments like what we see in today's day and age. So in a lot of ways, we're going back to a more rudimentary time where the only thing that mattered was a couple of farms that were all scattered and worried about their own interests, and so they only got together for communal governance for issues that affected the entire community. So Intersect is hopefully that place that we can all get together as a community and talk about what's important to us together, while still allowing us the freedom to go and do our own thing when and where the time is right. So we're hopefully, first and foremost, a community-driven organization. And I say we, even though I do not work for or represent Intersect, but I am a member, so, and I'm hoping a lot of other people will become members as well. The goal of Intersect is to ensure the maintenance and future development of Cardano's core technology. So Intersect, as it stands already, owns all of the code. IOG has turned over all of the open source repos to Intersect. And so Cardano Node, Cardano DB Sync, Cardano everything is essentially being managed and maintained by Intersect at this point going forward. And again, like we talked about the town square, allowing significant contributions to be elevated and heard throughout the ecosystem. So a way that we can hopefully raise up voices from the community to make them seen and heard, and allow more people than just the founding entities to start to contribute and collaborate. So we're going to advance the Cardano protocol together. And the big initial kind of focuses of Intersect are on the governance processes. So it's Intersect that is working on developing the SanchoNet Gov tools. People like myself and others that are serving on the open source committee are kind of worried about the maintenance and or future development of core technologies. We're working on testing platforms and infrastructure for those core technologies. And of course, community fundraising. So Intersect has a grant-giving arm as well that's a little bit more open, but more narrowly tailored than something like Project Catalyst to specifically execute very narrowly focused goals that we have in the Cardano ecosystem. So the 5 pillars of Intersect are to support community development, to administer community-led governance, to coordinate delivery and definition of a technical roadmap, maintain system stability, and develop the core Cardano technologies. And so this is what happens when you let the developers try to draw an organizational chart. This is kind of like how I envision Intersect working. So we got like all these fluffy clouds of community everywhere. But it's powered by us, right? Like, so we have the board of directors. Those are going to be elected from the community. We have these committees that are going to run certain aspects of the organization. Those are going to be elected and appointed from the community. And then we have a ton of working groups already, and I'm sure there's going to be a ton more that are made up of us in the community that come together to kind of steer the boat in the direction that we have as a community. So it all starts and ends with the community, which is why I like to say that it's powered by us. So what are the benefits of joining Intersect? You can help to shape the future development of Cardano. You get access to grants and work packages if you are a developer or somebody that might be interested in doing education or community building or anything else that kind of is helpful to the Cardano community. You can strengthen your personal and professional networks just like any other professional organization or members-based organization might be. And ultimately to contribute to the success of the ecosystem. So again, how to get involved. You can join as an individual yourself. You can join as a company who's maybe either developing or participating as part of the Cardano ecosystem, or ultimately both. That's what I did. My companies are members as well as me personally, a member of Intersect. You can participate in domain-specific steering committees, working groups, task force, or advisory boards. Essentially, you know, somebody says, hey, we need to develop a policy on governance for, you know, how do we run this organization or how do we run Cardano? And you raise your hand and say, hey, I know something about that or I'm interested in that, get involved. You can apply for grants and community-led work initiatives, which I think the DRMZ team applied to run a community hub here in San Diego, so hopefully that gets approved. You can participate in the community discussion forums, which at the moment is a Discord, as if we don't already have enough of those, but hopefully we'll move to some more traditional communication platforms and contribute positively to the Cardano ecosystem's growth and development. So with your participation, together we can build Intersect into the beating heart of the Cardano ecosystem. Join today, intersectmbo.org. Thank you, and with that said, I have nothing else, and I'm kind of tired of talking. So thank you very much, guys.